Okay, so today I'm going to be talking about style, which kind of turns into a discussion about voice. And I'm going to be drawing this, which, by the way, if you want to own this or a bunch of the other cool art that I've done on this channel, you can go to brandondayton.com and a bunch of my original art for sale is there, including this guy. So the link is down below. So check that out and let's talk about style. A very common concern to have when you're starting out is to ask, what's my style? Or do I have a style? Or what should my style be? And this is unusual as most questions about art go because it seems to be a very, very common question, but honestly, not ever a question or concern that I really ever had as I was starting out. So for me, the arc of my art study has always depended on copying other artists. I mean, from my very earliest memories, it was about trying to draw like someone else. And this is something that continued on throughout the whole process of my art education and art career. When I was in junior high, I copied Disney, Akira, and all the awesome old 2000 AD artists like Carlos Esquera and Mike McMahon. I hadn't really learned to appreciate Brian Bolden yet at that time. Later, it was aping the image founders and doing my version of Eric Larson or Jim Lee. And then my interest veered away from art for quite a while, and it wasn't until I had really graduated from college that I started focusing on growing as an artist again. And then I was focused on copying Frank Cho and Jeff Smith, which I still get compared to Jeff Smith probably more than any other artist. But, I kind of got back to that game of trying to just basically ape other artists. And that's always kind of been my focus, to look at another artist and just be like really wowed by what they are doing and try to copy it. And I've now done it with so many artists, and I still do it. My influences, who I'm trying to copy, it changes from week to week. And I can really go through my old sketchbook and point out who I was trying to ape at that time and what I was trying to copy about their work. But I never really felt like I was developing a style through all of this, or even really felt like a need to develop a style, like, oh, geez, what's my style? Part of that was probably due to the fact that most of my working career, I've been working as a generalist and really as like a gun for hire. Basically, I did whatever job I needed to do in whatever style, which in one regard has been a fantastic way to educate myself and really explore lots of different approaches. To this day, I feel really comfortable doing stylized cartoony stuff, or I can do stuff that's more realistic or painterly, and I can do everything in between of almost any subject. I'm better at some of those things than others, and clearly there are artists out there that can kick my butt at any of those individual approaches, but there's very little that intimidates me as an artist. It would have been really different if I was trying to find work as an illustrator. I think in that case, it really helps to have a style so that clients can have a good expectation of what they're going to get if they hire you. If you're going to do illustration, I would recommend doing the same thing. I even know of artists that have like two different styles, and they'll keep two different portfolios and maybe even brand themselves differently for each style. But I'm not going to go too deep into that because it's just not a world I understand very well. I've never had very much success as kind of like a freelance illustrator. And although I've never intentionally tried to establish a style, I can remember that being a frustration for me when I was exploring doing freelance work. My portfolio was all over the place with different looks and subject matter. But now that I've had some time away from being a hired gun, I do feel that I've developed what you could call a style, but it was never something I developed intentionally. The way that I prefer to think of it is that I feel like I've developed a voice. I make art in the way that best expresses who I am, and my own individuality and the style component feels like the side effect. Like I said, I'm still constantly influenced by other artists and trying to do what they do, but it's all in service of my voice. In some ways, this is really the first time in my life that I really feel like I'm creating art. Everything else was a product to be sold and was kind of crafted and fit around that objective. And there's a big difference between voice and style. Style, of course, it's this surface thing. It's the line width, the color palette, the stylization. But voice is the reason for the style. It's the heart underneath the image. When you look at an artist and you're wowed by their style, it may not really actually be their style that's wowing you, but that they have something worth saying. and they're using their tools expertly to say it. So, I mean, the first thing is that you need to have something interesting and worthwhile to say. And if you're a boring person, style really isn't going to fix that. So I guess what I would recommend for those of you thinking about developing a style is to, focus on developing a voice. The best way to do this is to focus on doing the stuff that you want to do. And this doesn't mean avoiding scary or stuff that's intimidating, because sometimes finding your voice means going to scary places, and it means challenging yourself. It just means finding space in your life to make art that you want to make and that you feel like you can be proud of. It also means doing a lot of exploration, which means doing a lot of drawing. Don't worry so much about style right now. Just focus on learning as much as you can. Be a sketchbook fanatic. You don't have to wait for the Sketchbook Summer Challenge to start putting in the hours filling your sketchbook. Study everyone you admire, copy their work, learn how to do what they do. It also means building up your skills. Skill has to come first. If you are asking about style and you're not able to pick up work as an artist, you're getting way ahead of yourself. Focus on getting in the game, getting experience, learning your skills, and then you can start worrying about style. And I don't know, maybe you don't even need to worry about style. One exercise that I've done in the past, that I've done with my coaching students as well, is to do an artistic genealogy. The basic idea is that you find an artist that you admire and you find out who their influences were and go study those influences. For example, maybe you like Jeff Smith, so you read his Wikipedia page and discover that Jeff Smith loved Pogo and Walt Kelly, so you go back and study Walt Kelly. And from there you do it again. You find out who Walt Kelly admired and you go back and study his influences. In my particular case, I did something similar. I remember being introduced to James Herron's work through Ryan Otley several years back, and I was just totally blown away by James's work, and I still am. There's still lots of things I try to rip off that he does. But in passing, Ryan mentioned, James really likes Katsuya Terada, and he likes Urasawa. And so I started digging into those two artists, and I particularly really fell in love with Urasawa's work. I think Pluto is probably one of my favorite pieces of comic storytelling I've read in years, and that made a big influence on how I did Green Monk, actually. Especially there's like the North No. 2 sequence. It's just one of the most sublime pieces of comic storytelling ever. So I need to get back and read some more of his work. I hear 20th Century Boys is amazing, so I got to read that. But then, seeing Urasawa's work led me to Osamu Tezuka, which I know I discovered really late in the game. I'm sure all of you guys have already seen a ton of Tezuka, but I adore his work. I mean, his Buddha is mind-blowing, totally inspiring, so inventive, and just so full of love and joy. So why do this exercise? So this is something that I think I really got from Shane Glines. But he's made the point in the past that when everyone has all the same influences, everyone's work ends up looking the same. So I believe that you have to dig deep to find your influences. And the influence you have are going to affect what your quote-unquote style is going to be. And Shane is a great example of this. I mean, I used to subscribe to a service he had where he would just keep this amazing archive of all these classic illustrators that he would dig up. His Tumblr is still a great resource for finding these amazing, obscure, illustrations. So I'll include a link to that. But I feel like that's the price you pay for finding your voice. You need to tell a story that matters. If you want to tell a story that matters, it has to be from the heart, and you have to dig deep for your influences. And part of the reason for that is that the experience of digging is really kind of an act of self-exploration. You're making this psychological journey, and you're going to discover in these other artists that you find tools that you can use to express the specific message that you want to express. So it just doesn't come cheaply. And the really powerful thing about putting in this work and taking the time to do the work that best expresses your voice is that it will generate more work in that style. That's probably the most fundamental law of illustration and art, is that the work you choose to do is the work that you'll get hired to do. If you are kind of like reactive in the work that you take, if you're just kind of like anytime someone says, hey, I have a job, if you take that job, a lot of times you can kind of get into a rut where those are the only types of jobs you end up getting. So it's important that you are active in establishing the type of work that you want to get as an artist, and to do that, You have to find time, you have to find space to make art that expresses your voice. And if you do that, if you put in the work, and if you can be honest and vulnerable and sincere, your style is going to emerge as just a natural consequence of having something worthwhile to say. So that's been the case for myself. I'm now at a place in my life where I feel like I have a voice, and I probably have a style that goes along with that. I'd be willing to bet that my style could even vary quite a bit, but the voice, there would still be a consistency in the voice. But if I were asked to do a spot illustration with some room for variation, I have a pretty strong idea about what I would do. I'm not going to try to do 5 different things. I have kind of like one way I'd like to approach it. And that could change as time goes on, and I get curious about things, and I grow, and I try out different things. But, I feel very grounded as far as where I am and my ability to speak as an artist. But, if you want that, if you want to be able to have a voice, if you want to be able to have something that reaches other people, it's all about making it a priority to make the art that you feel is important to make. Everyone has such a different experience with style and voice. I'd love to hear your story in the comments below. Please like this video, please subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time.